Hello, Adam here. Today I'd like to talk about environment for language learning, just how the environment you're in can affect how well you can learn a language. A lot of people think that if you live in a country, this is something that will make you fluent, this is the best thing you can possibly do, or this is just a really hugely beneficial thing. But I think anyone who's ever lived in a country, whether China or somewhere else where like English isn't the main language, you can attest to the fact that there are a lot of people who live in the country for years and years and still never learn to speak the language well. So why is living in the country even useful? I think it can be useful, but I would really just break it down to a few things. I think there's three real mechanisms from my experience that have been great for my Chinese study about living in China. But those things have only really been useful because of the fact I was already studying. I don't think that I could just come here and study Chinese brilliantly, or just learn Chinese brilliantly if I didn't study systematically as well. If it's either live in China and just talk to everyone, or stay at home and study hard, I think studying hard is kind of better. But anyway, the three things that I've noticed in my time here: I studied Chinese for 2 years before coming to China, and I've been in China for a year now, continuing studying. The first one I'd say is just the huge amount of passive listening you get. It's so frequent, it's a lot of repetitive. A lot of it will just be things like on the bus, hear people talking, or hear the TV, walking down the street, when you're out. Just everywhere there's just this kind of background chatter of Chinese, and sometimes you can hear things that you know and it's good practice, but like I've spoken about last time when I was talking about tones, the most important thing is just learning this hidden rhythm, and also just getting a lot of exposure. My belief is that when people study a language, a lot of emphasis is put on understanding, but I don't actually think understanding is the most important thing. I think repetition and a lot of exposure is more important than understanding. When you have a lot of exposure to something, it's much easier for you to remember it in the long term. So let's use an analogy. If you've been to Beijing, been to Tiananmen Square, you'll see the soldiers lifting up the flag and like marching around, and you might kind of not know exactly where they are. You'd say, so they're these guys, not sure if they're soldiers, if they're police, if they're just some kind of symbolic thing. And then maybe you go again, and you kind of just get a feel for like roughly what these soldiers do. I'm saying soldiers, roughly what these men in costumes do. Could be something else. And then one day you read the book and it says, People's Liberation Army in Beijing raise the flag every day, this is who they are. And then you've got this long history of like slight exposure, even if you're not thinking about it consciously, maybe like subconsciously just aware of them, you're like, oh, so that's what that is. And in the same way I think learning a language, just expose yourself to a lot and then, oh, so that's what that is later on, rather than just like studying the book and just trying to remember like all the different things. So I think the passive listening makes a huge difference. That's the first thing. The second thing is kind of exactly the same thing but with reading. Reading is really important for learning a language, but I don't mean like book reading, I just mean like everywhere you are. Like if you need to get the bus anywhere, you have to read the bus stop sign. There'll be situations where you're in where you'll need to just read things, restaurant menus, information. And of course you can't do that unless you've already studied the characters, because otherwise it's just a blur. And then you just get that everywhere, so if I can... 星星你可以转一下吗？看转位的。So if you look around here, there's just loads of Chinese writing. Okay, and that's just pretty normal everywhere, and I think that's just the repetition, big help again. Third thing, very obvious, speaking to local native speakers all the time, every day. Just keeps you on top of it, keeps you sharp. And I think with Chinese, as is the same with English, definitely, and this is probably the same with most languages, the things you learn when you study in a different country from the book are almost exactly the same, but not quite the same as what people actually speak in daily life. There are a lot of colloquialisms, things like that, which are kind of just different. There are things which are in the book, which people rarely say. There are things which are not in the book, which people often say. So they're the three things. Do where I think of the difference. I think other than that, it's not this magical thing. I just think there are those few mechanisms, and they're all based on repetition. So you may think, okay, that's nice, interesting to hear your experiences. But where if, I don't live in the country, I don't have that chance. If you don't have that chance, what I'd say is like, there are still things you can do to replicate these. So the first one, passive listening. Just listen everywhere you go with headphones in. Listen to things like Chinese podcasts, radio shows, and Chinese podcasts, radio shows, and you can do that everywhere. So when I was in the UK, every time I'm commuting, walking somewhere, earphones in. If I'm in the gym, earphones in. If I'm just like at home by myself eating dinner, I'll have it playing. If I'm in the shower, I'll have it playing. I wake up in the morning, I'll put it on, and you can just recreate that really well. And you can kind of, I think that can almost be better if you're just like using a study resource or like a publicized resource. Great. Number two, reading. This one's a bit trickier. What I have heard of people doing, never done it myself, is to stick lots of characters, lots of vocabulary in your bedroom, and just so you're just looking at it all the time. It should be pretty effective. And then the third one, which is speaking to native speakers a lot, a little bit harder, but there's a solution for this. Go to a website, language exchange, I don't know what the website's called, but just Google it. There are lots of websites where you can make friends with people who want to practice languages, get them on Skype, and you can practice. Actually, if you do it for long enough, you can filter out all the people who want to learn English. So when I did it, originally I'd say, okay, we'll do a language exchange. I'll teach you, I'll speak to you in English, you speak to me in Chinese. But then, funny thing is, after a while, you kind of filter those people out, because some Chinese people, they speak to you, they see you're a foreigner who speaks Chinese, and they become very fascinated, and then they don't really care about speaking English anymore. And then there are other people who just kind of make friends with and can speak to them in Chinese if your Chinese is like better than their English. Or even if it's not, even if their English is better, you can just find people like that and like speak to enough people, you can filter it out. When I was in the UK, I was doing that every single day on Skype. So that's where I'd say. Another point I'd make is that once you've been living in the country, once you get to the intermediate level, I feel like apart from like maintenance and very gradual progress, the benefits of just the environment don't wear off because it's always helpful. They don't push you up. What pushes you up is study. So for me now, I can communicate with everyone. Or if I want to get better, I need to learn advanced vocabulary, read more, things like that. So yeah, that's my message. If you want to improve in your language skills and you can't live in the country, listen all the time, passive listening. Read, get to recognize, fill your life with reading, and finally, speak to people.